So the pregnancy could be so early on, say 2 weeks, where that fertilized egg simply isn't visible to the naked eye. Or she could have had a previous pregnancy and a miscarriage.
If this was a new pregnancy, this was something that she could have realized was happening to her body.
Potentially, yes.
Was pregnancy a possible motive in the murder plot trial? We're talking about what the medical examiner reveals in the courtroom. Plus, will convicted killer Jose Soto-Escalera take the stand to save his own life? Well, the penalty phase in his trial begins in less than an hour. We'll go there live. Plus, Diddy's defense team is laying out all the reasons for a lighter sentence. So will the music mogul get time served? Plus, the mysterious death of Ellen Greenberg, drumming up interest through a brand new documentary. The teacher found with 20 stab wounds back in 2011, and the case was ruled a suicide up until recently. So what really happened? We'll talk about it. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? This is the program where we get you all warmed up and ready to go for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. So we're going to kick it off as we always do. If I haven't you grab that cup of coffee right now, it's time for my opening statement. Where is the line between friendship and felonies? In other words, when does being down for your friends turn deadly? In the Iowa case against Dakota Van Patten, these questions are coming up. As Mr. Van Patten is accused of being a friend so loyal that he allegedly helped his buddy commit a murder. The murder of his friend's girlfriend, Melody Hoffman. Sounds like a pretty wild accusation, right? Yet, if you watch the trial, you'll see the prosecutors are proving the allegations against defendant Dakota Van Patten. His buddy, McKinley Louisma, has already been convicted by a different jury. When I look at the evidence, my friends, and look at these two buddies, I'll tell you what I see. What I see are two yo-yos trying to act hard, trying to behave like gangsters, thinking they can go kill somebody and get away with it. Instead, their misplaced confidence and foolish plan backfired. They not only caught murder charges, but these wannabe gangsters also destroyed their own lives in the process. That is what I see. Louisma is locked up for life, and based on the evidence so far, I think his pal Van Patten is about to join him soon. Melody Hoffman should be alive today. What happened to her was cruel, it was calculated, and it was callous. And now, Melody deserves justice. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
And when Melody Hoffman's blood was tested, was the HCG hormone present in her blood?
Yes, it was present and slightly elevated above. There's a little bit that should be in your blood that could be normal, but it was above the normal limit for someone who would not be pregnant.
In Iowa, we've got testimony resuming this morning at 10 a.m. in the case I was just talking about, the machete murder plot trial for defendant Dakota Van Patten. There is a 4-hour embargo on the testimony, but we're going to make sure you see every moment of this very compelling case. In Tennessee, we've got the Baby in the River murder trial. This is happening at 10 a.m. this morning. Defendant Brandon Isabel is accused of shooting his girlfriend and then throwing their 2-day-old baby into a river. And in Mississippi, we've got the state's case beginning today in the plotting parents murder trial for defendant Jeffrey Spence. So this guy is accused of killing his daughter's boyfriend. His wife, Karen Spence, has already pleaded guilty. Court's going to get underway at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Right now, let's turn to your top story this morning. Here's the big question. Will convicted killer Jose Soto-Escalera take the stand? So we're less than an hour away from the penalty phase beginning in this case that we've branded the pregnant mistress murder trial. You saw it on Court TV last week. This guy, he's facing the death penalty after a jury convicted him for murdering his mistress, Tania Wise, and their unborn baby, Josiah. Now, the jury got to hear lots of evidence, including the defendant's recordings where he lined out his murder plan.
And I'm not the only one. She's pregnant from that little that works there. She says it's mine, supposedly. I can't take chances. I lose everything. No, I am telling you the truth. If something happens to me, you already know. I'm going to blow her brains out so she doesn't talk. I have to do it, Eric. I have no other choice. I'm going to lose everything. What I need is someone to drive me. That's it.
Both the state and the defense plan to call witnesses during the penalty phase. The jury's going to be considering aggravating and mitigating factors for both sides. Now, a majority is no longer needed in Florida. Remember, after the Nicholas Cruz case, it's only 8 out of 12 that's needed in order for the jury to recommend to the judge a death penalty imposition. So the question we're wondering, is this guy going to take the stand to try to save his life? What do you think? Hit us up on social media. Let us know. I want to bring in our legal eagles and talk about it with me this morning. Criminal defense attorneys Don Malarsic and Franz Borghardt. Great to see you, gentlemen. Okay, Don, let me begin with you. As you do a lot of death penalty work, tell me, your best educated guess, do you think we're going to see this guy take the stand?
I do not, Julie, and here's why. You know, in a number of states, including Ohio, the defendant has the right to give an unsworn statement to the jury, and that's basically the defendant saying, hey, look, anything he wants. He could ask for mercy. He could talk about his own family and how they would suffer if he was killed. He can say anything he wants, and that's not subject to cross-examination. In Florida, the defendant does not have a right to give an unsworn statement, so any statement he gives is going to be subject to cross-examination, and that cross-examination of Mr. Soto-Escalera would be brutal. It would be difficult. And honestly, as we say often, Julie, I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze, and I don't see him taking the stand in his defense.
I'm so glad we have you on the program, Don, to talk about this. I mean, that's a really important distinction you just laid out for us. You know, it just may not be worth it for this guy, especially because we know how bad these recordings were. You get a good prosecutor, he's toast. Let's take a listen to one of them. This is where he's on that recording discussing choking Tania Wise as a way to kill her. And Franz, I want to come to you on the other side of this. Here we go.
What do you think about choking her, unintelligible?
Huh?
Is it better than a blow and just get it over with? I just can't do it, unintelligible, inside my truck. It won't hurt me if it's not my truck. I got to strangle that. You can't leave no blood or nothing in the truck.
Franz Borghardt, I want to tap into your experience serving as a former prosecutor before you went into the private sector doing criminal defense work now. How rare is it that you get premeditation on tape to use against a criminal defendant?
It's delightful if you're prosecuting, and it doesn't happen often. And in some respects, it's better than a confession, right? It also will absolutely be replayed in the penalty phase. Don's spot on. I mean, in Florida, it's just not. You don't get the same rights that you get in other places. So I agree with Don. His cross-examination would be brutal. And look, this is a guy who's not going to get on the stand anyway, Julie, and say, yeah, I'm sorry, I did it. There's not going to be a contrite heart. There's not going to be remorse. You know, and he has a right, by the way, it's a good law. He has a right to appeal the conviction for guilt phase and not to incriminate himself. And they're theoretically not supposed to hold it against him for not testifying in the penalty phase. But man, oh man, those audio tapes, which are absolutely going to be replayed in penalty phase, highly damning and definitely a feather in the case for the prosecution.
So true, Franz. Don, let me dovetail off of what Franz was just saying with you. When we think about the defense team's moves here in this penalty phase, would you kind of walk us through what they may be thinking in their strategy and how they're going to try to be effective in front of this same jury.
So the defense's job at this point, Julie, is to present what's called mitigating factors. And I would assume he has very good counsel that they have been working since they were first appointed on day one on establishing those mitigating factors. Now, mitigating factors can be things like childhood trauma, serious mental health issues. They could be substance abuse issues. They could be things like a lack of a significant record. All those criteria are facts that the court will hear, that the jury will consider. They could bring in friends, family, co-workers to try to establish that this is a three-dimensional human being. He's more than just the worst act he's ever committed. And they're trying to get the jury to weigh those mitigating circumstances against these 5 aggravating factors that the prosecution proved in the guilt phase. In the penalty phase, it's all about mitigation. So that's their job, is to bring in psychologists, psychiatrists, mitigation specialists, family members, friends, co-workers, and to try to make him a real, compassionate human being, more so than the monster that he's been portrayed in the innocence phase.
Yes. And Don, a follow-up for you, please. When you're doing death penalty work and we think about how that punishment is reserved in America for the people that the states believe are the worst of the worst. When you're on the defense side, are you expecting a loss typically? Are you expecting to be playing the long game, in other words, and really putting a lot of effort into the second half of the trial?
Absolutely, Julie. Absolutely. That is your job, 100%. From day one, you have to think, I'm going to have to face a jury arguing for my client's life. You can never, ever assume that he's going to be found not guilty of the aggravated murder or any of the aggravating factors. So from day one, a good defense attorney has to start preparing for mitigation. And oftentimes, that is your only job, is to try to save your client's life. In a case like this, when the evidence of guilt is overwhelming and the defendant's own words convict him, from day one, your only goal is to try to save his life.
Yes, I really appreciate the insight, Don. Franz, let me talk to you about some of the bad facts. Perhaps one of the most sad, awful things about this case is that the baby was killed too. I mean, she was days away from delivery. You know, they were about to schedule her C-section right before she was killed. She had a name picked out. Josiah was what Tania Wise wanted to name that baby. Franz, how do you think the baby is going to be factored in by this jury when it comes to an aggravating factor the state of Florida is going to try to get him on?
Well, I do think that what's interesting about Florida, which is dissimilar from most of the other states in the United States, is from the defense perspective, the defense has to find either 5 holdout jurors to say, hey, I can't put this guy to death, or they've got to find 8 jurors to say life. And whenever you have the killing, the unnecessary killing of a child or an unborn baby, I mean, it's kind of hard to make that case for this guy doesn't need to be alive. This guy we can't, it's not enough to put him in prison for the rest of his life. This is what the death penalty was designed for. That is the common sense argument of most civilized human beings or uncivilized human beings, depending on what side of the spectrum you are, Julie. And look, it's bad enough to kill a human. It's even worse to kill a human unborn child.
I'm with you, my friend. Really excellent insight as we're getting ready for apparently about an 8:45 start. We know this judge has been very timely, so we're going to go in there as soon as everybody is ready to go. Franz Borghardt, Don Malarsic, thank you both for the great discussion. We'll hit a break. When we come back, here's what's next on Opening Statements.
Of course, we would have liked to have seen a conviction on the sex crimes in RICO, but we understand beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard.
I've been saying this for months. We've said it with each lawsuit that came out, and today that was proven true. The media got it wrong about Sean Combs every single day for nearly 2 years.
Denny Garrigos there making a point about Diddy's case. So now the question is going to be, what kind of sentence is he going to get? in this case. We'll talk about it coming up. Plus, what happened to Ellen Greenberg? A new documentary is revisiting the mysterious death that's haunted her family for more than a decade. 8.5 months pregnant, a young mother found brutally murdered.
To lose a child, there's no words for it.
Now the victim's boyfriend, a married father of 4.
Guilty of first-degree murder in the death of his mistress, as well as their unborn child.
That's one of the things that struck me. He was not remorseful.
Court TV takes you inside the South Florida courtroom where jurors will decide if he will be put to death.
The pregnant mistress murder trial, penalty phase. Live coverage today, only on Court TV.
Day.
Today's a great victory. It's a great victory for Sean Combs. It's a great victory for the jury system. You saw that the Southern District of New York prosecutors came at him with all that they had. They're not stopping, but one thing stands between all of us and a prison, and that is a jury of 12 citizens. And we had a wonderful jury. They listened to every word, and they got the situation right, or certainly right enough.
Sean Diddy Combs and his legal team certainly had reason to celebrate after he was acquitted of racketeering and sex trafficking charges in July. But the date where he'll return to the courtroom is coming up soon, October the 3rd. And what will happen remains in the balance. So Combs' legal team, they're asking the judge to sentence him to no more than 14 months in prison for his convictions on 2 lower-level prostitution-related charges. And because he served so much time ahead of the case going to trial, that could allow him to walk out of federal custody almost immediately after his sentencing. Combs' defense team had this to say in a writing to the court, quote, Mr. Combs' celebrity status in the realms of music, fashion, spirits, media, and finance has been shattered, and Mr. Combs' legacy has been destroyed. Goes on to say that Combs has served over a year in one of the most notorious jails in America, yet has made the most of that punishment. It's time for Mr. Combs to go home to his family so he can continue his treatment and try to make the most of the next chapter of his extraordinary life, end quote. Now, the federal prosecutors have stated that they will be urging the court to keep Combs locked up for a number of years. So we're asking this morning, will Diddy get time served? Let's talk about it. Still with me, high-profile criminal defense attorney Don Milarczyk, and want to welcome in the editor-in-chief of the Hip Hop Inquirer, somebody who watched every single day of this trial in the courtroom, Dennis Byron. Great to see you both on this. Okay, so let's start with the idea that he could potentially walk out if he gets time served. And Don, with this being a legal question, I want to start with you here, please, because I don't want everybody to think of him as Diddy. He's any other defendant, is he not, when it comes to how he should be treated in a court of law in America?
Well, Julie, yes and no. And here's what I mean by that, right? He is treated just like everybody else, but the court, one of the requirements of the court is to take a look at, the history and characteristics of the defendant. And the defense did a great job in their sentencing memo of pointing out, who Sean Combs is. He has some very significant mental health issues. He has obviously a substance abuse history. He also has incredible ties to his family, his children. And the defense did a really good job of highlighting his employment career, his extraordinary life, as well as his good charitable works. I mean, those are sentencing factors under the United States sentencing guidelines. So yes, he is to be treated like everyone else and give no special favors. However, the defense's job is to highlight those unique sentencing factors that apply exclusively to Sean P. Diddy Combs. And they did a fantastic job highlighting all those criteria. And most importantly, the court is supposed to avoid sentencing disparities. That's one of the factors the court has to consider. And the defense put in their sentencing memorandum that the average sentence for people convicted of this offense in the United States with no prior criminal record, just like Mr. Combs, is 14.9 months. So that ask of credit for time served is in line with what other judges across the country have done for similarly situated people.
Don, thank you for all of that. And speaking of the judge, Dennis, this is exactly what I wanted to ask you about. So here we don't have a jury recommending a sentence. We've got the judge, and he sat there hearing all of the evidence that you heard as well as you were in the courtroom watching as the jurors were. Tell me, Dennis, how do you see this judge coming down on sentencing?
Well, I think that if the judge follows the juror's decision, then I would agree with the counsel that, he should get the 14.9 months in, time served. But we have to also look at how he has ruled in the past. So if I was a betting person, I would say the judge would probably lean more towards what the prosecution recommends in the PSR report. A lot of people believe that he should get out time served, but I'm, been a little reluctant with this particular judge.
I appreciate that insight, Dennis. It's helpful. I mean, you saw him making all the rulings that he made. Not long after Diddy's acquittal, we spoke with his lead counsel, Mark Agnifilo. He did an interview with me on this show that we had taped, and one of the things I asked him about was what's ahead, what's going to happen for his client as the sentence is imposed. Let's take a listen to what he said about his career in music. Does he hope to return to music?
I don't know that he's thought that far ahead. The phrase he uses with me, and I can share it because he said that I could, is he says he feels he has more to give. And I expect big things out of him. But I think we need to let him have a little transition, have some downtime. I just spoke to him an hour ago. I said, I'm not going to rest until you feel the hot August sun on your neck.
Mark Agnifilo, an excellent attorney, really battled for him. Dennis, when you hear that, what do you think? Doing the work you've done for so many years, do you see a return to music for him?
For Sean, absolutely. He's bigger than life. He was, obviously someone that many people tried to emulate in the entertainment circle. I think that the energy, the people, drives them to want to be out there. I don't think this is a time for people to think he's just going to, if he's released there, he may take some time off to spend with his children and his mother. And I got a point also talking about that real quick, Julie. I recently lost my mother. And I thought about that as I was coming to do the show. His mother's very old. His mother is older than my mother. And I don't think this should be a sentence that would be more punitive than what he was actually convicted of. So I hope the judge takes everything in consideration with his children. He has an aging mother who's showing up pretty much every day. And, don't bow to the pressure of those who want to see him do a lot of time.
Dennis, we're so sorry about the loss of your mom. And thank you for pointing that out, because that was one of the things I will say that struck me when I was able to go in person, largely thanks to you, going into the courtroom with you, sitting there, watching along just the one day that I was able to see. And that struck me, the family support, because I think we think of him as like being on an island and he's, behind bars, and yet there's a lot of love for him still with his kids, his mother, a lot of unwavering support. And he shouldn't be treated any more harshly or any less harshly than anyone else on the same set of facts. So I want to talk a bit about the testimony and his reputation, because we know the jury found what they found, but it's a fair question. Can he ever rebound from the allegations that he was acquitted of? Let's listen.
So starting with blood, how would blood get on the linens at freak-offs? I was expected to have freak-offs on my period. Who expected you to do freak-offs on your period? Sean.
Who decided how many entertainers you would be with in a single hotel night?
Sean. How did you feel during the freak-offs when Sean beat you?
Worthless, just like dirt, like I didn't matter to him. But that I was nothing, like absolutely nothing.
How did you react to seeing news coverage and social media posts about Cassie's lawsuit?
Because there was 3 specific pages that was just a harrowing resemblance to what I was experiencing.
So we know before all of the allegations in civil court, and then of course in this federal case we're talking about, this guy was one of the most powerful people in music and entertainment in the world. Since then, his presence has been removed from numerous business opportunities, including being stripped of an honorary doctoral degree from Howard University. So as he's waiting to learn his fate, what is the public perception of him now? And I would add, is it a fair perception? Because I'll be the first to say, the trial was not what I expected it to be. We heard all of these wild things about these parties, and we heard about potentially minors and just, I mean, crazy things were out in the court of public opinion. The trial wasn't about anything like that. It was about his conduct within 2 relationships. That's what it was. And so I think for a lot of people who may not have paid attention to the trial, they may still be thinking these crazy things. Dennis, I want you to weigh in first on this, please.
I do think that the media coverage and all the misinformation that was floating out there from the time of the settlement of the lawsuit and then the raid, it did sway public opinion on who he is. They were looking for, when we heard entertainers, most of us thought they were high performing entertainers. Well, these guys were kind of performers as well. But, you know, I don't want to say certain celebrities, but we thought these celebrities that performed on stage with them, that rubbed elbows with them, would be the ones that come into the court. We sat in the courtroom. We saw none of that. We didn't even see Kanye West show up in the courtroom per se. We saw him show up to the building, but it was none of that. So there are people that might not have really understood that this wasn't about entertainers and children and you know, wild orgy parties. They made people out there. But his true diehard fans are going to support him. You know, we know they still have a lot of support just based on some of the letters of support that was submitted to the court. And that was over 70+ letters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we saw the celebration going on outside the courtroom. I saw those supporters, Dennis. Yeah, you're right. You know, it's really something. It just goes to show you, pay attention to the evidence. Don't make judgments till you've seen the evidence. And, you know, his swinging lifestyle was really what came out of this trial. We'll see what happens on October the 3rd. Dennis Byron, I know you will be there. Everybody check out the Hip Hop Inquirer. Dennis, thank you so much for making time for us today. Take good care. Don Malarczyk's coming with us. We want you to do the same at home, please. When we come back, we're going to talk about the mystery still surrounding the death of Ellen Greenberg, despite the case being ruled a suicide with 20 stab wounds on her body. A new documentary's gaining some brand new interest in her case. And was victim Melody Hoffman killed because she was pregnant? The testimony that could tip the scales of justice in the murder trial for Dakota Van Patten.
So the pregnancy could be so early on, say 2 weeks, where that fertilized egg simply isn't visible to the naked eye. Or she could have had a previous pregnancy and a miscarriage.
This morning, we're shining our spotlight on the suspicious death of Ellen Greenberg, a first-grade teacher found stabbed more than 20 times in her own apartment. And now a new docuseries that her family and friends are hoping will shed some light on her is coming out. It's called Death in Apartment 603, What Happened to Ellen Greenberg? Let's take a look.
Help, need emergency now. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere. Please hurry. There's a knife sticking out of her heart. Oh no! Oh no!
It was January of 2011 when Greenberg was discovered dead by her fiance. She suffered more than 20 stab wounds. Philadelphia medical examiner initially ruled Greenberg's death a homicide before switching it to suicide.
How was this ruled a suicide? It just does not add up.
I have investigated stabbing suicides in my career, but I've never seen anyone stab themselves in the back.
My goodness. Now, this is going to come out on Hulu. Ellen Greenberg was discovered by her fiance, a guy named Sam Goldberg, back in 2011. He told police that he had to bust into the apartment because the door was locked from the inside. Now, Goldberg has never been charged in connection with Greenberg's death. Her death initially ruled a homicide, then the ME changed it to suicide, which meant there would be no criminal investigation. And back in February, the Philadelphia medical examiner changed it again, saying that the manner of death should be amended to something other than suicide. And the city has agreed to reopen the case with the current ME. So some progress is being made here. Now, let's talk a little bit about this case. I want to bring in someone who's in that Hulu docu-series. She's a friend of Court TV Network, been on the show before, forensic pathologist Dr. Michelle Dupree. And to give us legal analysis as well, we have attorney Franz Borghardt here too. Okay, so Dr. Michelle, your thoughts on what happened to Ellen Greenberg?
I don't know how this could possibly be ruled a suicide. And there is no manner of death as something other than homicide. There's only 5, and that's not one of them. It's either suicide, homicide, accident, natural, or undetermined.
Right. And so to suggest that this was something else, it just seems crazy to people, lay people who are not forensic pathologists like yourself are going, how in the world with this beautiful, young, vivacious woman, you have stabbed herself, all these in the back, stab wounds to her back. Dr. Michelle, I don't know how in the world someone didn't have eyes on this when this happened, say, wait a minute, this can't be possible.
I don't understand it either. And I've read the autopsy report, of course, and gone through the photos and the scene photos. And this is a tragedy. And, you know, her parents are such heroes for pursuing this. Accolades to them.
Yeah, most definitely. Our hearts break for her parents. We've got a clip when they spoke to PennLive.com back in February, because remember, this is a Philadelphia area case. Let's listen to some of what Mom and Dad shared.
They said something about suicide, which I never considered for 1 second. Never, ever, ever would she do that.
It's like somebody punches you hard in the stomach, and again, and the air goes out of your lungs, and you can't breathe.
It's heartbreaking. Franz, I want to go to you on the fiance. So has not been charged. His name is Sam Goldberg. He's the 911 caller. He said to the dispatcher, quote, "Oh my God, she stabbed herself. She fell on a knife. I don't know, her knife is sticking out." Boy, it sounds like something we've heard a couple times here on Court TV, huh, Franz? In the Colin Griffith case, recently in the Samantha Krebs case as well. Is this fall on a knife theory becoming common? What do you think?
So I was just about to say, haven't we covered this kind of homicide? And I use that word deliberately. We've seen this before. And look, this guy is presumed innocent, but generally when we have the fiance or boyfriend calling in saying something ridiculous like she must have fallen on a knife, we generally see a subsequent prosecution, arrest and prosecution. Julie, this is not like Stairwell or Staircase, where it's like, well, did she fall down the stairway or was she pushed? This one's pretty much easy, and I hate to say it that way, and I'm sorry, it smells funny. So you got 2 choices. Either this is blatant incompetence in terms of a medical decision, a forensic medical decision, or there's something going on here that's a little sketchy. And that's, I'm going to put it nicely for national TV, sketchy. I don't understand. And guys, just so we're on the same page, probable cause, the lowest level of standard is more likely than not a crime happened. Not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This is like textbook probable cause for homicide. So maybe this documentary will put some life into this case and something will happen with it. But this just smells really funny.
Sure does, Franz. As I was just going to say, stinks to high heaven, this one. Dr. Dupree, this beautiful young lady had 20 stab wounds on her neck, her spine, the top of her head, and 11 bruises found in various stages of healing all over her body. Dr. Dupree, do you think she could have been a victim of domestic violence?
Absolutely, Julie. It certainly sounds like it. And, the other thing that I want to mention is, usually the first person that finds the victim and or the spouse or significant other is a suspect. I don't think he was ever a suspect in this.
That's a great point. And when recently after her parents had to bring all the civil litigation, and the ME is saying, oh, well, now we can change it to something other than suicide, said that this is based on information that the fiance was seen entering the apartment before placing the 911 call on January 26th, 2011. Franz, is it unconscionable to you that this wasn't considered at the time of this autopsy, or maybe it was deliberately ignored? I don't know.
At the very least, it's reasonable to say this could be a homicide. At the very least, someone enters into a room and into a space and finds their partner, their fiance, whatever, and they immediately jump to, she must have stabbed herself. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and it doesn't make sense to me how there wasn't some kind of declaration of, you don't like the fiance being the one who did it? Well, it's an unsolved homicide then. It's just to say that it was a suicide at any point. And by the way, the ripple effect of this incompetency, or whatever we're going to call it, is if someone is ever prosecuted for this, guess what a good argument for reasonable doubt is? That you couldn't make up your mind if it was a homicide or not. How does a jury do that? Or you are so incompetent in your determination, how do we know that the rest of the investigation wasn't handled with the same incompetency? Total disaster.
Excellent points. Boy, I wish we had more time. We're going to talk about this again as the docuseries is about to drop on Hulu. Excellent insight. Franz Borghardt, Dr. Michelle Dupree, thank you both so much. We'll hit a break. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to the murder of Melody Hoffman. Could she have been pregnant at the time, and was that a motive in the machete murder trial? Plus, we're moments away from learning whether convicted killer Jose Soto-Escalera will take the stand. Covering the country's biggest trials before we bring you inside the courtroom. Plus, the true crime cases you want to know more about in our daily spotlight.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
The brutal murders of 2 young girls.
Delphi is not one of those places where this would happen.
I killed Abby and Lily.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. Season premieres Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
Pregnancy could have been the motive in the machete murder plot trial, as testimony from the medical examiner may be tipping the scales of justice for the jury in Iowa. Dr. Kelly Cruz testified Wednesday, revealing a shocking discovery while performing the autopsy of victim Melody Hoffman. She told the jury that Melody could have been pregnant around the time of her death, which could point to possible motive.
There would be 2 options. It was very slightly elevated, so the pregnancy could be so early on, say 2 weeks, where that fertilized egg simply isn't visible to the naked eye. Or she could have had a previous pregnancy and a miscarriage. Once that occurs and those products of conception are removed from the body, HCG starts to trend down, and it was potentially just trending down to normal.
Now, on cross, the attorneys for defendant Dakota Van Patten pointed out the uncertainty of that possibility.
Can you at all date when that miscarriage would have occurred prior to this?
No.
Are we talking days, weeks?
It would be dependent upon how far along she was in her pregnancy to begin with, so the HCG level she started with. So it's hard for me to know, and every person's different.
So without knowing how long she had been pregnant, you wouldn't be able to tell us how long it's been that she miscarried.
Correct.
Let's talk about this. Let's bring in criminology expert, author, and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Good morning, Dr. Debbie. We want to know what you think about this. Was the possible pregnancy a motive here?
Yes, good morning, Julie. I think that is the motive. You know, Harvard University School of Public Health, Julie, conducted a 2022 study and found that the #1 cause of death among pregnant women in the United States is homicide. And by whom? By their intimate partners. So, Julie, I think that is the focal point of this case, and we have seen it time and again on your show, the various high-profile cases from Scott Peterson and the death of Lacey, an unborn child, Connor, Chris Watts, the death of Shannon, their unborn child, Nico, and two beautiful little girls, Celeste and Bella, and also allegedly the Massachusetts police officer, Matthew Farwell, and his pregnant mistress, who is now deceased, Sandra Birchmore. So, Julie, I do feel that this is the issue at hand here in this case, as we've seen, sadly, tragically, in other cases, and we must demand justice for Ms. Hoffman. She did not deserve to die, and if these were the decisions made by Mr. Louisma, Mr. Van Patten, then the penalties must be swift, severe, and certain.
Dr. Debbie, what you're sharing is so enlightening. It's making me wonder if, as a society, if we're largely unaware that pregnancy can be a dangerous time for a woman, depending upon the relationship that she may be in.
Yes, Julie, very well said, and important to have that conversation. You know, for many families, it's a glorious time. It's a celebratory time. However, in these issues and situations and circumstances that we are discussing, I think that for these defendants, the pregnancy becomes a problem for them, that now they feel they're angry, they're overwhelmed, they're hostile toward their intimate partner, and they feel that murder is the solution. But it is just so devastating, but yes, something that we need to create awareness about.
Right. You know, Dr. Debbie, we know you're a very busy person. Of course, I keep thinking about the other case we're showing on Court TV, the Jose Soto-Escalera case. Does this also kind of come to mind for you as you think about what may have happened to Melody Hoffman with Mr. Van Patten, allegedly?
Yes, Julie, I think there's direct alignment between Mr. Jose Soto-Escalera, victim Tania Wise, allegedly a pregnancy involved. And I just think that this mindset that individuals have, it's almost like we've talked about before in other circumstances, but I think still a relevant theory, and that is the disposal theory, that individuals feel that because another person some way, somehow has become an impediment, has become an interference, or some way, somehow an inconvenience, that they will solve the issue by murder. And it is just absolutely incredible to me, even as a criminologist. It is shocking. It is so sad and devastating, and we've got to create the justice for these victims.
Right. It is unfathomable, Dr. Debbie, as you said, because you think about, this is their baby. You think that, wouldn't that stop things? Like, logically, even if they're upset with the partner for whatever reason, you know, you would think it might cause them to pause and hesitate, but here we're seeing examples. I'm so glad we have you here to talk about this as we're getting ready to watch Mr. Soto-Escalera start his penalty phase this morning. So really appreciate it. You're always up on all the cases, Dr. Debbie. I know I can ask you about that. Thank you so much for the great information. We'll look forward to having you back very soon. Friends at home, thank you for being with us for opening statements this morning. We love your company every weekday morning. You can always share the episodes, watch them again if you miss them. Go to courttv.com. We put them up on that link there under the show's tab.